اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Brothers and sisters, before we begin, please recite Surah Fatiha for your marhumin and for the marhumin of those individuals that provided tonight's iftar. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. اللهم اغفرهم وارحمهم واسكنهم بجوار محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يوصينا معه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بهد الهمم ولا يناله غوث الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت محدود ولا أجل ممدود فترى الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووتد بالسخر ميدان أرض ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيبنا وحبيب رب العالمين بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن على أعدائهم أجمعين من أول يوم ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد فقال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المبين وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واستعينوا بالصبر والصلاة وإنها لكبيرة إلا على الخاشعين. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are speaking about Amir al-Mu'minin, and I said that inshallah in these days we're going to look at some of his sermons where Amir al-Mu'minin himself, he describes his own reality. And I said that one of the sermons that we were going to look at is very famous. You can find it in Bihar, you can find it in so many, especially there's a book entitled Qutb al-Nadira. It's all these sermons of Amir al-Mu'minin that you do not find in, for example, the Nahj al-Balagha. One of the problems that the Shias have is that they believe that if a sermon is not found in Nahj al-Balagha, that means that it doesn't belong to Amir al-Mu'minin. That's a misconception amongst the Shias themselves. Hatta when you look at the Nahj al-Balagha, a lot of the sermons that Sayyid Razi has in there, they start with what phrase? Min kutubihi. From his sermons, He doesn't have complete sermons. Most of the sermons that are in there, they start min kutubihi, meaning what? From his sermon is. So this misconception that if a sermon is not in Nahj al-Balagha, that means that it's not authentic, or if a sermon is not in Nahj al-Balagha, that means that it's made up. This is absolutely wrong. Why? Because Sayyid Razi himself, he says that he chose those sermons which showed what? Which showed the eloquence that was in the Arabic language, which showed the eloquence of Amir al-Mu'minin. That's the reason those sermons are in the Nahj al-Balagha. But when it comes to one of the sermons that does not exist in the Nahj al-Balagha, is the sermon of Nuraniya by Amir al-Mu'minin. And in this sermon, Amir al-Mu'minin, he tells Salman Farsi and Abu Zar his real reality, what his reality truly is, how a mu'min should believe him to be. He himself, when Salman and Abu Zar, the beginning of the sermon, Salman and Abu Zar, they're speaking to each other and they ask each other, what do you think Amir al-Mu'minin's reality is? And Salman, he says, let's go ask Amir al-Mu'minin himself. Let's go ask Amir, and this tonight's lecture is just that sermon, inshallah. It's a long sermon. As much as I can get through in explaining this sermon, I'll try my best. What's left over, inshallah, the next day, we'll get through the sermon. But when you read this sermon, there's some things that everyone needs to understand. One is that when Amir al-Mu'minin describes himself, people, they believe that, oh, this is ghulu. Now these individuals are exceeding the limits of Amir al-Mu'minin. In reality, what's really happened is that people have put a limit on Amir al-Mu'minin themselves. Once that limit gets broken, then they think that these individuals have exceeded the limits of Amir al-Mu'minin. No, the limits of Amir al-Mu'minin are not what I make out to be in my mind. The limits of Amir al-Mu'mineen is what he makes out to be in his own mind. If we exceed those limits of Amir al-Mu'mineen which he places on himself, then we've done ghulu. Then we've done ghulu. But if we exceed the limits that someone like me has placed on Amir al-Mu'mineen, someone like you has placed on Amir al-Mu'mineen, that does not mean that we've done ghulu. That does not mean that we've exceeded the bounds, we've exceeded limits of Amir al-Mu'mineen. No, it just means that we've exceeded what this individual comprehends Imam Ali alayhi salam to be. That's it. In some of these sermons of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam himself, he says that it's hard for individuals to comprehend me. Hatta in the Nahj Balagha, in the second sermon, what does Amir al-Mu'mineen say at the end? Do not compare the Ahlul Bayt with any one of the creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do not compare the Ahlul Bayt with any of the creatures or anyone from this ummah, if I was to use the correct words. Do not compare the Ahlul Bayt with anyone from this ummah. There's a debate that goes on about what the ummah is. Is the ummah this ummah that has recited the kalima of the Holy Prophet, or does the ummah also include the prophets themselves? Why? Because those prophets themselves recited the kalima of the Holy Prophet. There's a debate that goes on. If this phrase, do not compare the Ahlul Bayt with any one of the ummah, if it includes the prophets, then you and I cannot, what? Compare the Ahlul Bayt to even the prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, let alone people like you and I. But when we get to the sermon, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says the first thing, and this is what I want to focus my whole lecture on. He goes, he who accepts my wilayah superficially without having deep knowledge and firm belief has little reward for the deeds that they do. Why? Because their scales on the day of judgment, they will have no weight. Their scales will be less than what they did. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on to say, those whose scales will be light, their souls will be in perdition. For that they wrongfully treated our signs. Why? Because of the way that they treated our signs. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes, what are these signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that people will be asked about? Is it the sun? Sun is a sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is it the moon? The moon is the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is it this world? This world is an ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What are these signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the people, they mistreated? Who are these signs? If you look into history, Islamic history, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says what? I am the greatest sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Did the people mistreat the sun? Did the people mistreat the moon? Did the people mistreat the earth? No. Which one of the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were mistreated? You look at Amir al-Mu'mineen, he was mistreated. You look at Imam Hassan, he was mistreated. You look at Abu Abdullah al-Hussein al-Islam, he was mistreated. You look at the Ahlul Bayt al-Islam, they were all mistreated. So it's these signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam Ali al-Islam, he says, it's us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask about. How did you interact with our signs? We are these signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He goes on to say, O Salman, O Jundub. Jundub was the name of Abu Zar. He goes, O Salman, O Abu Zar, the faith of a believer will not attain the level of perfection until he would recognize me by my nude. The faith of a believer will not attain perfection until this individual recognizes me by my nude. When someone knows me by my nude, only then he would truly have attained faith. What does this mean? As long as we don't understand Amir al-Mu'mineen through his Nurani aspect, we have not attained faith. We have not attained faith. So it becomes necessary to understand Amir al-Mu'mineen the way he describes himself. Don't exceed the limits that he puts on himself. And don't bring him below the limits that he puts on himself. Because that's what a ghali is, who exceeds the limits of Amir al-Mu'mineen that he's placed on himself. That's what a muqassir is, who brings down Amir al-Mu'mineen from the limits that Amir al-Mu'mineen has placed on himself. These are these two phrases. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on to say, when someone knows me by my nur, only then he would truly have attained faith. He is the one whose heart has been tested with true faith, whose chest has been dilated in true Islam, and whose faith is based on discernment. He goes on to say that he becomes a Gnostic. He becomes an Arif. The Urafa that have gone. Amir al-Mu'mineen says once they reach this status where they understand my true reality, my nur, then and only then do these individuals become an Arif. Then and only then do these individuals become Gnostics. Now you have people that are claiming to be Arifs, that are claiming to be Gnostics. without the belief in Amir al-Mu'mineen. Why? Because they've taken on the superficial reality of Islam. They've only taken for what he had wrote in his Then I Was Guided, Sayyid Tejani, when he went to his journey, and when he was with the Shia, they went to Abdul Qadir Jilani's mausoleum, and the Shia, he asked them, why have you taken the peel and left the fruit? Why have you taken the peel and left the fruit? He goes, what do you mean I've taken the peel? He goes, Abdul Qadir Jilani is here. He's just the peel of Islam. Why don't you go to the fruit of Islam, which is Musa ibn Jaffar? Why have you left the fruit of Islam, which is Musa ibn Jaffar, and you've held on to the peel? This is what a lot of Muslims have done. They've held on to the peel of Islam, and they've left the fruit. The fruit of Islam are the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Those are the fruits. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on to say what? He goes on to say this individual, he becomes an arif, he becomes a Gnostic. And anyone that starts asking, when we're talking about Amir al-Mu'mineen's wilayat, when we're speaking about Amir al-Mu'mineen's attributes, Amir al-Mu'mineen himself in this sermon, he goes, anyone that asks why and how, anyone that has doubts, they'll be immersed in disbelief. They're immersed in kufr, disbelief. And he goes on to say, Ya Salman, in true essence, recognition of me by my nur is the recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recognition of me by my nur is a recognition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the recognition and knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is indeed recognition of me. Meaning what? Meaning that this is the sincere devotion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has wanted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he goes on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Fad'ullaha muqlisina lahu din wala karihal mushrikun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with sincere devotion. Sincere devotion. Amir al-Mu'mineen says what? He says that I am that sincere devotion. You want to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through me, Ali ibn Abi Talib, even though the kafirin might be averse to it. Even though the kafirin might be averse to it. Today, what happens? When we call Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Imam Ali al-Islam, you have our own Shias that call this shirk. You have our own Shias that call this shirk. Why? Because they don't understand. They don't understand. What is their, where's the shirk? Where's the shirk? When we call these individuals, when we ask them for help, what everyone needs to understand is that these individuals, they don't have that power to help us within themselves. Meaning what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them whatever power they needed. The power that they have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not their own. It's been given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power is His own. No one has given it to Him. If He wanted to, He could take that power away. If He wanted to, He's the one who gave prophethood. If He wanted to, He could take prophethood away. He gave the imamat. If He wanted to, He could take imamat away. At the end, power belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we ask the Ahlul Bayt, we keep this in mind. Hatta, they asked Sayyid Khouy this question. They asked Sayyid Khouy this question. That the Shias, they go to the haram of Imam Ali al-Islam and they ask him directly. They ask him to help. They ask him for everything. I don't know if this individual was a Shia or Sunni who asked this question, but whatever the case was, this question was asked. And Sayyid Khouy, Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Please, if everyone can come forward. One more time. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I want the youngsters to come forward as much as they can, please. When they asked Sayyid Khouy this question, Sayyid Khouy, he replied that yes, the Shias do ask Ali ibn Abi Talib, but they ask knowing that he's the one who takes these prayers to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They ask knowing that he gives, not by his own permission, he gives by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we say Ya Ali Madad, when we say Ya Abbas Madad, when we say Ya Hussein Madad, we know that this permission has been given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this permission, what is this permission? You look at the Quran, Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, what does he say? He says that I'm the one who does what? Cures the blind. Does he not? I'm the one who cures the blind with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He goes on to say what? I'm the one that brings the dead to life with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm the one that creates a bird. I'm the one that blows in it and it comes to life with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of this with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what does this permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mean? Does this mean that whenever Hazrat Isa alayhi salam did something, he constantly did dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, this is not what this means. This means what? This means that the Prophet is what? A representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he's a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent or given him some of the powers that are required for him to use. Now he doesn't need to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, can I use this power now? Ya Allah, can I use this power now? Ya Allah, no, he doesn't need to do that. When it's required for him to use that power, he uses that power with the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A question arises here for Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. He says, I'm the one that creates. He's attributing the act of creation to who? This is Quran. This isn't hadith. This is straight Quran. I'm the one that creates. He's attributing the act of creation to himself. Himself. He's the one. He says, I'm the one that brings people to life. He's attributing that bringing people back to life, the act, to who? To himself. I'm the one that does. The act, Hazrat Isa alayhi salam says what? I'm the one that does it. I'm the one that does it. That means what? That means that Hazrat Isa alayhi salam is Khaliq? Hazrat Isa alayhi salam is the one, he says what? I'm the one that creates. Correct? We read, inshallah, if not tonight, on the 23rd, in Dua Joshin Kabir. And the phrase is very famous. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what? Ahsanul Khaliqeen. Khaliqeen is plural. Who are these Khaliqs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of? Who are these Khaliqs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of? They asked Imam Jaffari Sadiq al-Islam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. They asked Imam Jaffari Sadiq al-Islam, especially about this question with Hazrat Isa al-Islam. Hazrat Isa al-Islam, can we say that he was a Khaliq? He said, yes, you can. But him being Khaliq is not the same as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being Khaliq. You can't compare Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to any one of his creatures. That ability to create was given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That ability to bring to life was given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You can say that Hazrat Isa brought the dead back to life. But him bringing the dead back to life is not the same as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to, he's the one who will kill Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. He's the one who will bring him back. Can Hazrat Isa alayhi salam kill himself and bring himself back? No. He couldn't even bring himself out of non-existence to existence. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that brought Hazrat Isa alayhi salam out of non-existence to existence. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he goes on in the sermon, he goes on to say, and we were all commanded, and all were commanded to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they have been commanded no more than this, that what? To worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, offering him sincere devotion, being true to faith, to establish regular prayer, and to practice regular charity. And that is the religion, right and straight. Worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is believing in Tawheed. Worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is believing in Tawheed. Sincere devotion and being true in faith is the confession of prophethood of the last messenger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And establishing prayers is my wilaya. Aqimus salat, so many times in the Quran. Aqimus salat, establish prayers, establish prayers. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, Aqimus Salat is my wilaya. Once you establish my wilaya, that's what that Aqimus Salat truly means. He goes, Aqimus Salat is my guardianship and devotion. He who pledges devotion and submission to myself has truly established the wajib prayers. Why does Amir al-Mu'mineen say this? And why does he equate himself with the wajib prayers? When it comes to the prayers, these prayers that we pray, if an individual doesn't pray and he leaves this world, can these prayers be made up? Yes, they can. The qaza of these prayers can be made up. If an individual doesn't do Hajj and they leave this world, can the qaza of Hajj be done? Yes, it can. If an individual doesn't fast their whole life and he passes away, can the qaza of fasting be done? Yes, it can. But when it comes to the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, there's no qaza for it. There's no qaza for it. If an individual leaves this world without the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, they've doomed themselves. Their kids cannot make up for that. Their kids, their children, their offspring can make up for the prayers, for the fasting, for the Hajj. Yes, but they can't make up for the fact that the parents left this world without the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. They can't. This is why Amir al-Mu'mineen says establishing prayers, the true establishing prayers is my wilaya. Why? Because this prayer of wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen cannot be made up by anyone. That's why Imam Ali alayhi salam, he says this. He goes on to say, Ya Salman, verily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made me his trustee over his creation, and he's made me the vicegerent on this earth. He's made me the khalifa on this earth, in his territories and over his servants. Allah has given me what no artist can depict and no man of understanding can truly comprehend. This is where we start putting boundaries on Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen himself, he says that no one can comprehend me. No one can comprehend me. Yet we start to try and put Amir al-Mu'mineen, or we start trying to understand Imam Ali alayhi salam. And when some of us read those narrations from the Holy Prophet, from the Masumeens, telling us what or who the Ahlul Bayt are, and they don't coincide, or they don't function, or they don't look the same way as we're thinking, then what do we say? Oh, this narration is zaif. This narration is weak. You have a scholar here. When it comes to narrations, you don't only look at the chain of narrators. That's not the only thing an individual looks at. You also look at the content within the narration. The content. A lot of people, they'll look at some narrations and they'll say, oh, this narrator is weak. And they'll sideline the narration. But when it comes to ilm rijal, when it comes to ilm hadith, you don't only look at the narration, you look at the content of the narration. If that content is also found from another narrator, you can't just sideline the hadith. Then you actually have to analyze it. You actually have to say, hey, you know what? Even though the chain of narrators is weak, but because so many different people are giving us a narration with the same content, then this content must be true. So when it comes to this narration of Amir al-Mu'mineen, this khutbah of Amir al-Mu'mineen, the content within the sermon is not only found in this sermon. The content of this sermon, where Amir al-Mu'mineen is describing himself, is found in other sermons also. Khutbatul Lulu is not found in Nahj Balagha. Content similar. Khutbatul Tatanjiyah, not found in Nahj Balagha. Content similar. Khutbatul Bayan, which a lot of people have a problem with. No problem. The sanad is this, the sanad is no problem. The sanad is whatever. But the content is also the same as Nuraniya. It's also the same as Tatanjiyah. It's also the same as Lulu. What are you going to do? When the people who studied Rijal, they say, hey, if the content is similar, then you can't just sideline the narrations. You have to look at it. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he's saying in these, when he's describing himself, what does he say? وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. Seek assistance. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, when you seek assistance through patience and prayers. And then it goes on to say what? وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرًا. It doesn't say وَإِنَّهُمَا لَكَبِيرًا. Salat and patience. Patience and salat. Huma would mean both of them are very difficult. Both of them are very hard. But no, the Quran, it says وَإِنَّهَا. That ha, that zamir ha, it goes back to what came right before it, which was salat. That salat is very difficult for people. What salat is very difficult for people? This salat? No. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, patience is Muhammad and salat is my wilaya. It's my wilaya that is very difficult for people. And you see today, we're living in this age, not just 1400 years ago, but in this age where we've understood imamat, not the way they understood imamat back then, but we've changed our thinking of what imamat truly is. Even though we have this idea of imamat, there's still people that question the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Shia, I'm not talking about the others. No, I'm talking about just within the Shia school of thought. Because this is supposed to happen until the zuhur of Imam Zaman alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Ya Ali. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on to say that indeed this is hard for people. My wilaya is hard for people to comprehend. My amr is hard for people to comprehend. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on to say what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made my wilaya easy only for those individuals who have a humble spirit. Only for those individuals who have a humble heart. Why is this? If you look at history, the only individuals that did not accept the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen were those individuals that were hard-hearted. Those individuals that thought themselves better to be, or that thought themselves to be better than the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. There was no mercy in their heart. You look at the second Khalifa, he's famous. What is he famous for? His anger. He's famous for his anger. He would threaten anyone for just about anything. This is what a Khalifa is supposed to be? Can you show me when the Holy Prophet just threatened just for anything? You look at the Khulafa, but you look at the way Amir al-Mu'mineen was with the people. And you look at the way these Khulafa interacted with the people, you see a stark difference. Hatta when it comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen, an individual, after the Holy Prophet passed away, an individual, he came to Abu Bakr and he told Abu Bakr that before the Holy Prophet left, he had promised me something. And he goes, what did he promise you? He said that he promised me that he'd always give me dates, that I would always get a certain type of date. And he tells him what those dates were. And he goes, if you're truly the successor of the Holy Prophet, then it's incumbent on you, it's wajib on you to fulfill his promises. And Abu Bakr, he says, no problem. He gets those dates. And Abu Bakr, he asked him, how many handfuls did the Holy Prophet promise you? He goes, you should know if you're the successor. First question, you should know if you're the successor. He goes, okay, he gave me 2 handfuls. Abu Bakr, he gives him 2 handfuls. The man, he starts counting them, one by one. When he starts counting them, he gets angry. And he goes, these are less than what the Holy Prophet used to give me. These are less than what the Holy Prophet used to give me. And then he goes, you're not the successor of the Holy Prophet. If you truly were, your hand would be the same size as the Holy Prophet's. It'd be the same size. Salman Farsi was there. He goes, come, let's go, I'll take you. He goes, where are we going? The true successor to the Holy Prophet. When they go, Amir al-Mu'mineen, without even being told Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes, you've come to get your dates, isn't that right? He goes, Ya Ali? He goes, yes. He goes, this is the first proof that I have that you're the true successor of the Holy Prophet. Without me even telling you why I'm here, you know why I'm here. And he goes, the Holy Prophet used to give you 2 handfuls. Isn't that also correct? Ya Ali, that's also correct. Without me even telling you. This is the second proof. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he gets those dates, he gives 2 handfuls. The man, he counts each one of those dates and he says, Ya Ali, now I truly know that you're the successor of the Holy Prophet. Why? Because your hand and his hands are exactly the same. Your hand and his hand are exactly the same. The same amount of dates that used to come under his palm, those same amount of dates are coming under your palm. This is what it means to be a successor. Not just claim to be successor, but truly prove that you are the successor to the Holy Prophet. And this is what Amir al-Mu'mineen does throughout his whole life. Yet people still rejected him. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, who goes on to say, Ya Salman, we are the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will not remain hidden. We are His light that can never be extinguished. And we are those of His bounties which can never be matched. Amongst us, our first is Muhammad. Our middle is Muhammad. In fact, we are all Muhammad. He who recognizes us in this manner surely attains true faith. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on to say, Ya Salman, Ya Abu Zar, Muhammad and myself were the one nur that was voicing the eulogy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That famous narration of the Holy Prophet where Ali and I are from the same nur. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, in the world of Anwar, me and the Prophet, we were from the same nur. We were the same nur. We were the ones that were doing the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when no other creature even knew what that zikr was. No other creature knew what that zikr was. Hatta the angels used to say, we used to pass by this nur. We used to pass by this nur and we used to overhear this nur do zikr. And when we overheard this nur do zikr, that's when we learned to do zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it was who? It was them, Ali and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who taught the angels how to do the zikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes on to say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to that nur, you be Muhammad and you be Ali. When he split that nur up. Imam Ali alayhi salam, he goes on to say what? He says that in this world of Ajsam, we have two different bodies. In this world, in this materialistic world, we have two different bodies. In this materialistic world, we have two different names. But in reality, we are one and the same. Our nur is one and the same. He goes on to say, it's what the Holy Prophet said, Ya Ali, you are my soul. Ya Ali, you are from me and I am from you. What does that mean, Ya Ali? You are from me and I'm from you. Imam Ali, he goes on to say what? He goes on to say, there's no difference between me and Muhammad except that Muhammad is the messenger and I am his successor. But when it comes to knowledge, what knowledge he has, what knowledge he possesses, I possess. When it comes to authority, whatever authority he has, I have. Meaning what? Whatever authority the Holy Prophet has, that's the authority that Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib has. Correct? Amir al-Mu'mineen saying this. That means what? That means that Imam Ali's authority, because it's the same as the Holy Prophets, his authority is greater than Hazrat Isa's authority. That means what? His authority is greater than Hazrat Ibrahim's authority. That means what? His authority is greater than Hazrat Musa's authority. Why wouldn't it be? Ayatul Wilaya. And this is the verse that a lot of ulama use. For example, Shaykh Mutahari, he uses this verse to prove the wilayat of Amir al-Mu'mineen. What is that verse? إِنَّمَا وَلِيكُمُ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ وَهُمْ راكعون. Only and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your wali. Only and only. Allah, innama. This innama, known as harf al-hasr, meaning when it comes to put a boundary. Only and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your wali and his prophet. And not just his prophet, but that individual that keeps up prayers and in a state of ruku, he gives zakat. That individual, those individuals are also your wali. So that means what? That means that the Holy Prophet has the same wilayat as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amir al-Mu'mineen has the same wilayat as the Holy Prophet, which is the same wilayat as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This wilayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it was different, or if it was the same wilayat that Hazrat Isa alayhi salam has, innama would not have come. Only and only these three individuals, it would not have come. So from this verse alone, you understand the wilayat of the Ahlul Bayt is different than the wilayat of the prophets. The authority that the Ahlul Bayt have is at a different level. Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, if he was to tell a body to rise from the grave, it would rise from the grave. But if Imam Ali alayhi salam was to tell Hazrat Isa alayhi salam to rise from the grave, he would rise from the grave. That's the difference there. That's the difference there. That's the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Imam Zaman alayhi salam himself, he says when it comes to this verse, when it comes to the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and us, there is no difference. There is no difference in the authority. Whatever authority Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had, He gave to us. He gave, that's it. But in terms of what can be done, there's no difference. And inshallah, we'll continue this tomorrow. But tonight, brothers and sisters, tonight is the night of the 21st. Laylatul Qadr. When Amir al-Mu'mineen, on the day of the 20th, before he's about to leave, what does he do? He calls everyone of his children. When he calls all the children, he sees that Imam Hassan alayhi salam is crying. He sees that Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam is crying. He sees that Lady Zainab, she's crying. Kulsum, they're all crying. The doctor, he tells them, he comforts them and he says that you don't have to worry. This is just a wound, he'll heal. But Amir al-Mu'mineen, he tells them, no, I will not heal from this. Tonight is the night, the 21st is the night that I will leave this world. But when he sees all of them cry, he asks Imam Hassan alayhi salam, oh my son Hassan, why are you crying? Imam Hassan alayhi salam, he starts to cry and he says, oh father dear, why shouldn't I be crying? I saw my grandfather leave this world. I saw my mother leave this world. Now you're also leaving me. Oh father dear, who are you leaving me in charge of? That's what Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, oh Hassan, call all of your brothers, call everyone. And when everyone comes one by one, the narrations say that one by one, he puts their hand in Imam Hassan's hand and he tells them, from today on, you're supposed to do what Imam Hassan tells you to do, one by one. But there's one child that is still standing by the door, and that child, when he's not called, he goes into the room and he calls his mother. And he says, oh mother dear, I don't know what I've done wrong, but can you ask Amir al-Mu'mineen for me? And al-Baneen, she asks, Abbas, what is it? That's what Abbas, he says, oh mother dear, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he called all the children and one by one, he put them in the hands of Imam Hassan and he told them, after today you're supposed to do whatever Hassan tells you to do, but he never called my name. Oh mother dear, have I done something wrong? Can you ask him? That's when Baneen, she comes out and she looks at Amir al-Mu'mineen, she says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, can I ask you something? What is it, Baneen? Has my son Abbas done something wrong, or have I done something wrong to upset you? That's what Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, Ya Baneen, neither you have done anything wrong, nor Abbas has done anything wrong. Why? What happened? She says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, you put each one of your children in the hands of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, but you left Abbas standing there. That's what Imam Ali says, he says, Ya Abbas, come here. When he says it's Mawla Abbas, he comes to Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says, Ya Abbas, I kept praying that I would have a son who will help my son Hussein on the day of Karbala. Ya Abbas, you are that son. I give you in the hands of my son Hussein. I want you to be with him on the day of Ashura in the land of Karbala. I want you to sacrifice yourself for me, for my cause. That's what Abbas and he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I will definitely sacrifice myself for Hussein. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he leaves this world, the narration, they say that Imam Hassan alayhi salam himself, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he had told both of them that I want you to carry the front part, the back part will go by itself, and wherever it stops, I want you to know that that's where I will be buried, and you'll see there that there's going to be a shiny rock that will stick out of the ground. I want you to dig there, and then you'll see a plate that was created by my great grandfather Nu, and it'll say that this is the qabr of Ali ibn Abi Talib that was created by him. When they go there, they see that plate, and when they make the qabr, they put Amir al-Mu'mineen in there. When they come back, Imam Hassan and the family is crying. Why? Because they just buried their father. That's when there comes a knock on the door. When that knock comes, it's who? It's the poor of the Kufa. They've come to the door of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and when Imam Hassan answers, they ask him, oh, Mawla Hassan, it's been a couple of days now, and we haven't received any food. We don't know what's going on. There used to come a man every night, and he used to give us food. That's when Imam Hassan he says, do not worry, you'll continue to get the food that you were given. But that individual that used to give you food was my father, that he has passed away. Brothers, sisters, it's the day of Ashura. Hazrat Abbas, he needs to keep that promise that he made to his father. The Mullah Abbas, he looks around when he doesn't see an army anymore. Imam Hussein kept telling him, you're the standard bearer of my army, you're the standard bearer of my army. When he doesn't see that army anymore, he goes, Mullah, what army am I the standard bearer of? That's when He says, Mullah, give me permission to go find Imam Hussein. If he doesn't give him permission, that's when Sakina, she comes and she says, oh, I'm good to hear it. Can you get us water? That's when Abbas, he picks up Sakina. He says, oh, Sakina, go ask your father Hussein, go ask Abu Abdullah Hussein to give you permission. When she goes, Mullah Hussein, he has tears in his eyes and he tells Sakina, oh, Sakina, if your uncle goes now, he's not going to come back. He's not going to come back. Mullah Abbas, he tells Mullah Hussein, oh, Abu Abdullah, please give me permission. They're all thirsty. He goes to Furat. When he puts water into the sack skin, he tries to come back. When he tries to come back, an enemy severs one of his arms. The other enemy severs his other arm. When he falls onto the ground, he's on his knees. There's an enemy that shoots an arrow in his eye. When the enemy shoots the arrow in his eye, he falls down. When he falls down, that's when he calls out, Ya Abu Abdullah, Adrikni. Mullah Hussein, he comes to Mullah Abbas' side. When he comes to Mullah Abbas' side, Mullah Abbas, he says, oh Abu Abdullah, oh master, since the beginning I was born, since when I was born, I was told that the first face that I saw was your beautiful face. Mullah, I asked you for one favor. What is it, Abbas? Mullah, there's blood in one eye and there's an arrow in the other eye. Mullah, can you wipe away the blood of my eye from this eye so I can see your face? Mullah, if I had my own two arms, I would not have bothered you to do this. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wallanatullah ala qawm al-kafirin. Matam Hussein.
Hi Ali Mola, hi Ali Mola, ye janaza